Welcome. It's Uncle Phil, and with me today again is Smooth Andy. As promised, today we're concluding our series on the AFC West. If you've enjoyed these videos, please like and subscribe on the YouTube. And if you want more picks, please go to UnclePhil'sLocks.com. Smooth Andy, AFC West. We've got a lot going on with AFC West. I mean, it's very interesting. We've got just a kind of a quick overview. Not that anybody needs it, is that we've got the returning two-time Super Bowl champs in the Kansas City Chiefs, who've been in 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowls, and the only Super Bowl that they lost was because they weren't healthy. So clearly, health is an issue, at any point, and especially for the Chiefs. The offensive line was not healthy when they lost against Tampa Bay. I know that hurts you when Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won against Kansas City. Tampa Bay, as many viewers may know, or Kansas City, well, Tampa Bay is your arch nemesis. Well, really, Tom Brady is, but Kansas City is one of your 2 teams. You're unique in the fact that you have an AFC team and an NFC team you root for. Kansas City come back potentially. It feels like last year was the year to get them in a way. This year they seem a little bit more loaded up. But then you kind of go down the list there. We talked about in our first video, we've got 8 teams that have brand new coaches. 25% of those new coaches are in the AFC West, and Jim Harbaugh and Antonio Pierce. So you've got those new coaches there with something to prove. And then you've got one of the established head coaches, second-year coach. He's literally the second oldest coach in the division as far as tenure, and Sean Payton with Denver and turning things around. We talked about it a lot. Coach and quarterback, certainly Kansas City's got it in spades. Sean Payton seems to be having his quarterback in Bo Nix. Jim Harbaugh, offensive head coach, has got it in Justin Herbert. And then you look at Oakland, and again, kind of a mess. You've got a defensive head coach and a Gardner Minshew as your head quarterback that you're depending upon. So, we typically always start from the bottom, but any thoughts about the AFC West before we get started?
Yeah, I think there are definitely going to be 2 good teams in this division. One's going to be Kansas City. The other's going to be the LA Chargers. The question is, what's going to come from those other 2?
Yeah.
Me, for some reason, I seem to be more fascinated with the guys who are, the 500 teams and the guys who are bad and trying to get better more than I am with the ones who are, who are at the top. I expect Kansas City will make the playoffs. Stranger things have happened. They could, if Patrick Mahomes goes out and gets hurt, God forbid, in week 1, all bets are off. But I think it's a 2-horse race, and I think, you got to favor Kansas City in the abstract, regardless of what's happening with Jim Harbaugh. And we'll get to that with them. One thing that really concerns me about the Chargers is their best 2 wide receivers are gone. This isn't the same team as last year with a better coach. This is, who are you going to throw to? So we'll get to that. But, those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah. Lots of questions there. Lots of good thoughts there. And I think you touched on something that was really important. You talked about that you're more fascinated with the unknown, less fascinated with Kansas City. We know who they are, not only the favorites in the division and the favorites in the AFC, but in the favorites to actually win it all again would be the first three-peat in the modern Super Bowl era. There were actually 2 or 3 other three-peats in the before the modern Super Bowl era. 2 by the Green Bay Packers, one in 1929 to 31, and then the Green Bay Packers again in 65 to 67, and then the Cleveland Browns did it 5 straight years from 56 to 60. Obviously not the modern Super Bowl era, but I think a lot of our viewers probably may not know that. So again, really interesting to see what Kansas City does. You and I, this is why we're doing this podcast, is that we're trying to do it from a gambling slant and predicting the unknown, and that's kind of what we're focused in on, because Kansas City should be, a favorite. Will there be any value in betting Kansas City? No, probably not, because the world loves Kansas City. They're too couldn't be hotter than they are. I mean, between Travis Kelce with Taylor Swift, and that is amazing. Travis Kelce's just blew up with his podcast. He just signed $100 million with Jason Kelce with Amazon yesterday, and then you've got, of course, Patrick Mahomes, who is on his way to potentially being the best quarterback of all times. And don't forget, Andy Reid, also as a coach, could potentially be making his way to the best of all time as well. Certainly in that conversation. Certainly, I think you'd have to consider him potentially the best offensive head coach in history. You certainly you can argue Bill Walsh about the offense that he installed that everybody else has kind of copied. But and certainly that's a fair argument. But Andy Reid certainly getting his due. When we talked about it before, when you have coach and quarterback, right, you tend to add wins. But as Belichick, Brady, and Gronkowski proved, if you have coach, quarterback, and tight end right, then you can potentially come a dynasty. And that's certainly what Kansas City's come. But, let's dig into the value, really the value of Kansas City's betting against them. But let's look at the value of the other teams. And let's start from the bottom and where at least I think the bottom will be. And I think that's the Las Vegas Raiders. It's just a franchise that's typically in chaos. And seems to be kind of there again right now. I mean, Gardner Minshew, we talked about him the other day with Shane Steichen, in relation to Shane Steichen in the Indianapolis Colts, and that was my whole argument, is that Shane Steichen got to almost one game within playoffs with Gardner Minshew, and I think that some people, again, because of recency bias, will think Gardner Minshew is this phenomenal quarterback, because of the way he played last year. And he was, and it's a good story. But, with a defensive head coach, he was, they initially signed Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator in the offseason. There were some contract entanglements that had to get out of the way. And he ended up obviously going to the Commanders, your other favorite team. And then, and they brought in Luke Getsy from the Chicago Bears. And quite frankly, what he did or didn't do with Justin Fields didn't work so well. So you've got an organization that's chaotic. Mark Davis from the top down, he's got his 25-year-old girlfriend, which was really funny. I saw that, I think I sent you something about that his super hot girlfriend says that she didn't even know he was a billionaire, that she was only attracted to his smile. So again, it's going to take more than smiles to compete in the AFC West. Just tell me your thoughts about the Las Vegas Raiders. How do you size up this team?
Well, I am very pessimistic about them for a number of reasons, one of which is I'm not a big believer in hiring the interim coach. No offense to Antonio Pierce. I mean, he could end up being great, and good luck to him in a sense. Obviously, unless he's playing Kansas City, I don't have any problem with him being a great success. But I think when you come out of a coaching staff that was as toxic as the one that he was an assistant coach on, and then you get to be the players coach, who everybody is like, oh, thank God we got rid of that guy, and they play hard for you and things go well and everything looks good. And then you hire him the next year, and that sense of relief and that fire to play for the guy you like is mitigated. And that's one thing. Again, hopefully I'm wrong. He's a former player. I don't want to wish anybody badly as a coach. But when you look at their team, I mean, Minshew is just like Jacoby Brissett for me. I like him a lot as a backup. I do not like him as a starter. He's a character. I like him for that too. But if he's your backup, that's great. If he's your starter, that's not a good sign. They do have Devontae Adams, obviously, and that's good. The rest of their wide receivers aren't particularly pretty. you just look at this roster and it's not, I mean, they got Christian Wilkins, it's a nice addition, but it's not a very impressive roster. It'll be interesting to see Bowers and Mayer, by the way, on the same field at the same time. But aside from that, I just don't see them having the horses, and I'm not sure that their coach is gonna be able to work the magic this year with a full season that he worked last year by taking over for somebody everybody hated. So
Yeah.
that's where I am on them. I'm pretty bearish on them.
Yeah,
But
no, I certainly do. I think they've got an opportunity. I think there's going to be some times where they're going to do okay.
mhm.
And because, you've got Max Crosby on one end, made a massive signing in getting Christian Wilkins away from Miami over the free agency period over the summer. And man, that is a massive move and makes their defense more than formidable. And certainly Antonio Pierce, that's his strength. I would expect them to be pretty solid and be competitive. They certainly played hard for Antonio Pierce. To your point, I can't name a single coach that the players wanted in college or in pro that actually turned out to be good. That turned out that ended up working well.
Right.
And it's almost like if the players want him, then you go against him. And I mean, if you look at players just in when it comes to gambling, um, I don't know a single former player that is an excellent uh, picker of NFL lines. I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe there's one or two out there that I know that may be out there, but I just don't. And it's like almost when I always laugh when I watch like the ESPN bet show that talk about and they have former players on there that give their opinion about of lines and what they think. And look, man, when I was younger in the gambling, I used to trust that, and I just realized that those players actually suck at this, and they are just terrible.
Mhm.
And last people you should listen to, and the last people you should listen to as coaches. Now, the other thing you mentioned that I think is hugely important that you touched on, that interesting to get Bowers and Meyer on the same field at the time. And what is really unique about that is that Gardner Minshew, his he is best when he plays a 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, and formation. And that's exactly what you got. When you look at Gardner Minshew, his stats in the history of that, he is 66% completion percentage with two tight ends on the field and only 60% with everything else. And he has a record of 8-2 with 12 personnel, and he's 10-10 in all others. So that certainly does play to his strengths and might make them sneaky in some games before, I do think that they're going to be a disaster. Are they going to be a New England disaster? Or are they going to be, potentially a New York Giants disaster? I don't think so. But they certainly are in a tough division, and their record may not reflect their spunkiness. But it'll be interesting to see if Antonio Pierce can become what I think is be the first player-driven head coach to actually succeed. Because I'm like you, I'm bearish on it as well. I don't expect it. It'll be very interesting. Certainly, they are also the Jimmy Garoppolo less Raiders as well. So that's a change for them. Um, but let's move on. Let's move up. From there, I mean, it's kind of take your pick, but let's go with Denver. You've got the coach, you've got this was the quarterback he wanted in Bo Nix in preseason. What's preseason? Not much. I mean, you can tell a lot about kickers, but you can also tell, some accuracy things. And Bo Nix was the most accurate of all of the rookie quarterbacks out there. He was the most accurate, and in the 7 drives he led, 6 of them led to touchdowns. So, he is everything that Sean Payton likes about a quarterback. He's a high-level processor. He's very accurate, and he gets the ball out of his hands quick. And that's what Sean Payton wants. And certainly, this is somebody as close to Drew Brees that he's had. Potentially the next best thing to it. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. The great thing about um, Bo Nix is that he called his own plays, his own protection in college, and so um, that'll be a big help for him going into pros. And obviously, won't be calling protections, but he'll understand that a lot better than the average rookie quarterback coming in. He also started more games in college at two high-level D1 programs in Auburn and Oregon that, and it was successful at both, more so at Oregon. And so he comes in with a little bit older quarterback, a lot of experience. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, they're taking a huge cap hit this year. They've got 85 million of dead cap money because of Russell Wilson. They're literally paying him 38 million this year to just go play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That tells you about the fractured relationship between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Just kind of a complete disaster. I don't think anybody will ever forget. I don't know if it's a Monday night game or Thursday night game or Sunday night game, but and Sean Payton just dressing down Russell Wilson on the sideline was just kind of an ugly incident. I didn't, it's football, but wasn't a good look for anybody there of how that happened. But regardless, he seems to be happy with who he has now. They had to release Justin Simmons, went to Atlanta. They had to clear some cap space, and they did that. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out. How do you see Denver and how their upcoming season is going to be? You're muted.
Sorry about that. The dog bark that I muted. Thank you.
That's all right.
You caught that quickly. The news on Bo Nix sounds promising, but I'm going to take everything with a grain of salt until I see him play against first team defenses and schemes and things he hasn't seen in the preseason during a vanilla season. I'm a Chiefs fan. I don't like the Raiders, and I hate the Broncos even more because a lot of friends who live in Denver. But Bo Nix is going to be a bit of a wild card. It's similar to even Aaron Rodgers, what we talked about before. Like, what are you going to get? What's it going to be? Well, this is a rookie quarterback. This is the ultimate. What are you going to get? Sure. But you know what? I mean, one thing you hear a lot in preseason is with rookie quarterbacks, people just saying glowing things, right? And then the next thing you know, you got Zach Wilson. So we're gonna have to figure out what's going on with that. They did lose. They released Tim Patrick, I think his name was Tim, right?
They did.
And Detroit picked him up.
Yep.
It's interesting to me that they felt they had maybe he was costing them some money or something, but that they had a sort of a wealth of of riches at wide receiver when their wide receivers are currently Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, and Marvin Mims Jr. But they decided to do that. They obviously also traded Jerry Jeudy, probably to get rid of his cap hit as well. So their wide receivers are really not impressive.
Well,
The tight end.
They did draft a couple they did get a couple in the draft. They got Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Certainly a speedster. And then they got Devon Vele, maybe it's Vele, out of Utah. So both tall guys, 163, 165. So hopefully that'll help. But to your point, they must feel good about him, or they wouldn't have released who they did.
True, but they're both second stringers as well right now. They're both listed as they only have five wide receivers, and the two rookies are both backups to Cortland Sutton and Josh Reynolds. Sure. So we'll see.
Well, I think they're playing with they don't have as much cap space as a lot of people, and it's probably going to show in their roster this year. And certainly you're already seeing how thin they are at wide receiver. So, we'll see. I mean, I think that they'll be better than the Raiders. Again, coach and quarterback, versus what the Raiders have. But I don't know how good they'll be. I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
I got to say also, if you look at their defense, I'm looking at their depth chart. That's just me grooming through it.
Yep.
I recognize some of these names, but I don't recognize them as great players. They do have Pat Surtain, who is a great player. The rest of it's very like who? Their defensive line is John Franklin Myers, Baron Browning, Alex Singleton, and Cody Barton. I'm sorry, those are three linebackers. I'm sorry, John Franklin Myers, Baron Browning, Zach Allen, and DJ Jones. Um, I don't know. I think maybe we shouldn't be concentrating on their offense, even though, I think their wide receiver room is a bit of a concern, and Bo Nix being a rookie is a bit of a concern.
Sure.
But look at this defense, and it looks like a no-name defense. Maybe some of these guys are young and good, and I just don't know it yet. But it doesn't look like an intimidating defense to me.
Well, you've got a guy who is in Bo Nix who's shown to be accurate. He's older, probably can read defenses pretty well, and might take him a game or two, but it looks fairly confident. And you've got Sean Payton, who's probably one of the best play schemers and callers that the game has ever known. So, in theory, they should put up some points, and their defense may give up some points. They may need to because their defense does. So maybe you look at this from a gambling perspective, that maybe you look at potentially at some overs with them because they're going to be in some track meets.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another thing to think about is the new uh, Los Angeles Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, who packed up and left Michigan after a national championship, brings his style of football, kind of a tough bully type, run oriented offense. He has been successful everywhere he's been, and it's hard to believe that he would not be successful here. He was successful with Colin Kaepernick at San Francisco. I mean, how could he not be successful with Justin Herbert? Justin Herbert, I'm sure, is extremely grateful to see him. Justin Herbert is, he's playing with what is his fourth head coach in 4 years. So you've got fourth head coach in 4 years. Justin Herbert is amazing. I really found this stat amazing. Justin Herbert's 30-32 in his career, has a losing record as a quarterback of a quarterback that everybody says is fantastic. But I think he is. I think he just uh, the Spanos family who own the Chargers are notoriously a little cheap, and they've gone with unproven head coaches. They've gone with defensive head coaches, and they've just really done a disservice to Justin Herbert, and it showed. And and out of his 32 games that he's lost, 22 of his 32 games have lost by one score. And really, that comes down to coaching a lot of times, because when you get in those situational type things, it's situational coaching, and that makes a difference. I think last year they were 0-7 in games decided by 3 points or less, which is, again comes down to coaching, something that I think Harbaugh can improve upon. You mentioned it earlier, they've lost some wide receivers, but I look at Keenan Allen, I look at Mike Williams, and how often were those guys available anyway? I mean, it seems like those guys were always injured. It's like first or second game, one of those guys go down, and the other one that stayed was limping around and injured the entire time that they were out there. So, look, they certainly provide some veteran leadership in the team, but I'm not sure how much, and they got rid of Austin Eckler too. So it was just some older people they phased out. They certainly got a lot younger in a lot of ways, and certainly with their roster. And I'm really excited to see what they do this year. Again, it kind of concerns me that Justin Herbert was diagnosed with plantar fascia during the preseason. Sometimes that can bug you, but again, that can be injected and he'll play and he's fine and he's turned. Harbaugh says he's back at practice now, so he's up and running. So again, this team, it shouldn't just be on Herbert anymore, because he was having to pass the ball all the time in every situation. And Harbaugh he loves the run game. So I know that they'll take the pressure off him. They certainly got some running backs from the Ravens in the offseason, and J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So they'll be in better shape there. Really excited to see what they're going to do. He worked on the offensive line. Big Joe Alt is certainly lived up to the building. Everything coming out of camp says he is a star in the making. So should be interesting to see. What are your thoughts about them? Just as a team, and then any angles you see from a gambling perspective.
Well, as a team, to your point, you mentioned the 0-7 in 3-point games. I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yep.
I think you're right about that being potentially related to coaching. It's also just it's bad luck too, to be
Yep.
honest. You know,
Yep.
okay, we just took the lead, but Patrick Mahomes has the ball with 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Uh-oh. So that's partially coaching, but that's also partially just having the ball last or not having the ball last. So that can happen.
I
So I
feel
expect
like
that.
that when you have it when it's that lopsided at 0-7, it feels like to me it's more than bad luck. It potentially
Yeah,
is like, hey, maybe we talked about Nathaniel Hackett and the Jets bringing somebody in the final 2 minutes because he tightens up and he's terrible in the final 2 minutes. Not like he's great during the rest of the game, but he's especially bad during that time.
hmm
And maybe some of these younger coaches, you saw it last year with Staley. He seemed like he was just as tight as he could be. And maybe that's that. The NFL, again, the margin of error is very thin. The margin of victory is very thin. It comes down to a play here or there, and potentially at the last part of the game. To your point, when you have Patrick Mahomes, and anything, 30 seconds or greater, then you're in trouble.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, so I get, but I mean, it's hard not to look at, I mean, to your point, you mentioned Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Okay. Speaking of guys who can't stay healthy,
no doubt.
number one and number two on the field. Joshua Palmer, Lad McConkey, the rookie out of Georgia, and DJ Chark are their three starting wide receivers. That's not particularly great. Will Dissly's an okay tight end. Good offensive line looks good, especially on the ends, on the tackles. And then in defense, they seem to have a pretty good secondary. Khalil Mack, boy, he just hasn't been the same in years now. I'm almost surprised to see him still playing. He's kind of like, oh, what's his name? Used to be in Denver, and now he's in. Last I checked, in Buffalo. I'm not sure if he's still there.
I know what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm just have drawn a blank.
Yeah.
Um, they're just not the same dominant forces that they
Yep.
both were when they were younger, and now they're just sort of like the old man trying to chip in. So it's a mediocre looking, better than mediocre, but those skill positions on offense that's shaky. Fortunately, Herbert's not a rookie, so he can he can probably work with them and all that. He's not out there running for his life trying to find an outlet everywhere. He's been in the league long enough to be able to know how to hit the hot routes and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, they look like a pretty good team. I think they're going to be probably a playoff team, wild card, something like that. They'll probably beat the Chiefs once out of two, that kind of thing. But that's about it. Definitely better than Vegas and Denver. I think Denver, with their coach, it's hard to say for sure that he could pull some magic. But I think that Harbaugh inherited a pretty good team, and he's if you have the quarterback, you're halfway home right there, and they seem to have the quarterback. So, yeah, I'm anticipating them being the second best team in the division, and I expect them to probably slide into the playoffs at the end at one of the wild card spots.
Yeah, yeah, could certainly be. I certainly see that. Certainly got the coach and the quarterback right by all indications, and but just do they have the roster yet? And may take them another draft, another free agency to get who they need to get. We'll see. The team that doesn't have a lot of question marks is the Kansas City Chiefs and your Kansas City Chiefs. So really, what a great team. I mean, I just feel like last year was the year to beat them. I mean, I'm not sure what else to say about them other than you should have got them last year. I mean, am I too overly positive about Kansas City this year?
Well, It's hard. Yeah, I think everybody's going to have a little bit of a residue from the fact they just won another Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is as advertised. There's nothing hyperbolic about him. Running game is Pacheco, and Edwards-Helaire for some reason is still around. They did get rid of Kadarius Toney, which might in itself be the best move they did in the offseason because there'll be less pick sixes bouncing off the face mask. Um, they did. They got two starters on offense out of their. I think they have both of their picks were in the first round. I think they traded up to get Kingsley Suamatea, who's going to be the left tackle. Xavier Worthy is going to be a starter at wide receiver on the outside. Um, Defensive line looks good. They kept Chris Jones. Yeah, it's. I think the only thing that can hurt these guys is injuries. And they kept Creed Humphrey, which I was really glad to see. He's their center. He was a Pro Bowler as a rookie out of Oklahoma, a third round pick, and he's been a Pro Bowler, I think, every year since. So he is, and you know how important the center is on the offensive line. So, it's hard not to like what I see. They did lose another great cornerback, but Trent McDuffie's here to fill that spot. And then Joshua Williams is going to be the starter at right cornerback. We'll see how that works out. I don't think the secondary is as good with Trent McDuffie and being the main guy, but by all accounts he is that good. It's just a question of whether the guy on the other side is going to be able to hold up his end. So
Yeah, no question. McDuffie's excellent. And to your point, I think that's really the only hole that I see is that, you just don't replace L'Jarius Sneed, who's arguably, I don't even think it's arguably, he's a top five cornerback in the NFL.
and
And
Charvarius Ward from 2 or 3 years ago, they lost him too. I mean, they just keep churning out corners that end up
yeah,
going away.
well, we'll
Yeah.
see. I mean, certainly, just as much as Patrick Mahomes gets credit, there's no question that to me, they don't win that Super Bowl without Steve Spagnuolo last year. I mean, that might have been the biggest retaining free agent last year is keeping him there. He's won three Super Bowls. I don't think he gets near enough credit. He's won three Super Bowls with Kansas City, one with the Giants. I mean, he's just super impressive. And what he's done. So to your point, if they can do that, they should. I know that their defense mainly didn't play any of their, the majority of their defense, their ones didn't really play much in the preseason, but um, their defense did give up more 20-yard receptions than anybody else in the preseason. So, I don't know if there'll be any carryover to that. Preseason is fool's gold, right? I mean, it means nothing, other than you learn who some players are, learn who the backups are, backup quarterbacks. Again, in the NFL last year, 60 quarterbacks started in all the games last year, a 32 team, 60 quarterbacks. So that the backup quarterbacks are going to be important. So for us in gambling, we need to know who's going to come in and approach that, and that helps. The Chiefs certainly hope that they never have to use a backup quarterback. It was very interesting that going back to Steve Spagnuolo, a stat that I found interesting is that Kansas City averaged giving up 28.3 points per game during the regular season, and then Steve Spagnuolo just locked it down in the postseason where they only gave up 15.9, which is just literally unheard of, which is kind of massive. And I think I said Chiefs played in the last three or four Super Bowls, played in four of the past five Super Bowls, and have won three. And the fourth that they didn't win because they were not healthy. Chris Jones having him back's massive. I think they're going to be excellent. The you know Is this the last ride for Travis Kelce? He turns 35 in October. Do you
Yeah,
think
I don't think he's the
I mean,
same player. Go ahead.
he's signing. He's got signed up to do some movies next summer. It kind of feels like it potentially might be the end for him. That he's got all this other stuff going on outside of sports at this point. He and Taylor seem to be getting more and more serious, which I know the NFL would hate to lose out on her. They even made a schedule, the Kansas City schedule. They made it to where she could go to one of the games this year. They've got, it was like, it's the game. Where is it? It's the game against Buffalo in week 11. She is playing just in Toronto the night before. So this allows her to go to the game the very next day. So the NFL is, I don't think that was by coincidence. They're getting more viewers. Um, Clark Hunt came out and said that increased their viewership 30% last year by having Taylor involved with the Chiefs. So everybody's happy about Taylor, and it's a big deal. But we'll say that there was some noise with Kansas City in the offseason, and I don't like that. It's calmed down since the uh, since the since the preseason started. But in the offseason, uh, they had um, they had um, Rasheed Rice had multiple arrests. There was
Yep.
some little controversy about Harrison Butker and his speech at Boston College. Defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs, got arrested twice. First one for animal cruelty. The second one, it didn't take a month before he was in trouble again. Got arrested on second degree domestic violence and second degree burglary. Breaking into his child's apartment. Patrick Mahomes started a coffee company in the offseason. And we talked about Travis Kelce. So a lot of distractions, but look, that's what happens when you win. Things are under magnifying glass. Success comes. Some of the things are good, some of the things are bad. But regardless, I just don't see anybody stopping this team, and they're going to be tough to beat. And how
Yeah,
it goes.
I mean, I don't think they're a shoe-in to win the Super Bowl by any stretch. You got a
No
tough road. No matter what happens, it's going to
question.
be a tough road. But I think they're more or less a shoe-in as long as Mahomes is healthy to make the playoffs and probably have home field or something, some kind of advantage that maybe the second best team in the AC or AFC record-wise. To your point about Kelce, I don't think he was the same player last year he was the year before, which means I expect that he won't be the same player this year as he was last year. I don't think it's as much about motivation. I hope it's not. He seems like a guy who loves football, so I think he's going to keep working hard and try to get every year he can out of his career before he has to go out to pasture. But that said, Father Time is undefeated, so we'll have to see how he looks. I hope he doesn't allow all that garbage with Taylor Swift affect his preparation for his body and for his mind for the season. I hope he wouldn't do that, but we'll see. I think he kind of had the reputation that even though he wasn't dating wasn't seriously dating one woman. I mean, I think I heard he cheated on one ex-girlfriend or whatever. I get the feeling he had a little fun before he met Taylor Swift too. So, he had some distractions. They just weren't as media related as this one. But yeah, I think as a Chiefs fan, I'm feeling pretty good about this year, but still got to play the games. We'll see.
Understand. Well, I think you've already done it before. We come part of the show now where it's rack 'em and stack 'em time. I think you've already kind of done that, but just to make sure, let's do it for the audience one last time to tell me your four in order.
Okay. Kansas City, LA Chargers, Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'll go with the same thing, although it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Denver jump up this year
Yeah.
and go, but to switch those places. But I'm with you. I'm going to stick with your assessment and do that, guys. Thank you so much for joining in. If you enjoyed this half as much as Andy and I do, because we love doing this and we do this all the time, even when the cameras aren't on. But guys, please like and subscribe to this. Go to Uncle Phil's Locks if you want picks for the season, because as you can see, again, we're already dialed in. We think about football all year long, not just during the season. But guys, thanks again for tuning in. And as always, let's roll.